Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
Intane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. Hopefully, wherever you are in the country and the world, you are doing fantastic. For re-listeners, thank you for jumping on. For new listeners, welcome. Hopefully, you enjoy the conversation and also hopefully you subscribe and like the podcast. So before I invite my guest on for today, an apology from Tane today. He is exploring the country. He just finished up work, or he's doing a bit of a road trip to see his family, which is really, really beautiful and well deserved for someone who's been working so hard through the year. So, as always, I like to share a bit of a learning that I've had over the last week or so. And if you listen to the last episode, I spoke about the power of people around you. And today I am the learning that I had over the last week was a quote that I read from Winston Churchill. And it's a controversial topic and a person, but let's put that aside. But one thing that I really hit home for me as we come to the end of the year and start up a new year is he said something in his book that was really powerful. It said, "Success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm." Why that hit home with me is because in our life we have so many times when, well, life is full of failure. Life is full of failure, and it's so easy for us to stop and go away and just to reduce our passion. But from all the people that I've spoken to, or people on the podcast, people that I've had a chance to work with, and I'm also sure my guest today will share this as well, is that even if you do have failure, if you really believe in what you believe in, whatever that is, and if you don't lose your enthusiasm, at some point you're gonna get that breakthrough. So whatever you're doing in your life, when you get failure, just walk through the next failure, have the enthusiasm, grow the enthusiasm, and actually let that help you with your success. So that's my learning from the last week, and hopefully that resonates with you. It really hit home for me. But enough about me. No monologues. If you want a monologue, you listen to Jimmy Kimmel or those other crazy cats. I'm really excited and really proud and really honored to have our guest today. I've been following this young man for a little bit over the last few months, and as I said to him just before I jumped into the recording, was I wasn't sure when is the right time to get them on the podcast, and now is the right time. I think it's the right time because this young man has done some really cool things, and we'll get them to tell you about it. But I'm really proud, really excited, and really privileged to invite onto Boss of Knowledge, Cairo. Kia ora, Cairo, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No worries, Cairo. For people who know nothing about you, who is Cairo at this point in time in life?
Well, at this point in time, I think I take up a bit of a dynamic role. I am a Year 12 student in Christchurch, but I'm also a founder of a aerospace business, which takes up a lot of time. So I'm basically one third in school, two thirds in business. So I'm basically trying to become an aerospace business founder.
How awesome is that? And for people that are not in New Zealand, how old are you? How old is the year 12?
Yeah, 17
Be-
years old.
Beautiful. So at 17 years old, you are spending two-thirds of your time trying to build your business and one-third at school. What does school think about that, Cairo?
School's actually very supportive. It's quite surprising. So at first they were a little bit skeptical. A lot of the stuff that the fundamental technology was actually centered around school. And then they were a little bit supportive in that stage of things. But then as I started to move it forward into something that's a viable business, then they actually started to support it, which was quite cool to see. It's really concrete evidence that they want to see before they said, yeah, well, yeah, we'll give him time out of school to actually work on this because he's actually going somewhere with it.
And I love that, it's really awesome to have the support because, sometimes, in traditional school systems, sometimes you have an idea and they're like, okay, cool, but this doesn't link with the curriculum. So come back to class and, this is what's important for you. So it's really awesome. And I have a bit of a special place for Kashmir High School because I think we have some amazing, amazing teachers there and some amazing people that I've known have come through Kashmir High School. So, yeah, I think this is why I want to connect with you because of the Kashmir link. But before we talk about your business, I want to talk about where does the world of aerospace come to you? I mean, this is something that is so, so niche and so so specific, especially in New Zealand. Living in New Zealand, we don't have too much. We have a few people that are out there doing some pretty cool things, but when you think about the space world, you think about the States as the place that leads that. So, what is your inspiration into the space here? Literally.
Well, yeah, I actually think that it's quite a common aspiration to want to work in space or be like an astronaut or something like that. But it's also, for been a long time, it's been quite inaccessible. So people have thought that it's like a distant frontier out there and only a select few actually get to go there. But it's quite recently became quite close to us, and that New Zealand's pioneering a pathway for ourselves to be a global leader. So now's really the chance where it becomes accessible for people and put those initial dreams to use. So for me, it started off being an astrophotographer. Um, it was a good hobby, but let's say that time has been taken away from that, and I don't have much time to do that anymore. But it really did spark a sort of want to know more about space because I was imaging all these things that are happening, and it's sort of they're away. It's sort of like a picture frame. Like you see these things happening, but you have no way of actually doing anything with it or getting out there and being with them, which means that it's sort of like we're just watching. So it sort of sparked a want for me to actually go out and do something with space and then actually go start my own business. So this is my first company trying to use space, and then I have much more plans to build further businesses with it.
Awesome. I love that. And again, I'm going to step back a little bit. I love the way you spoke about, as we grow up, a lot of people want to be astronauts. This is something that, a lot of people have and aspirations and dreams, but then it just disappears because, as you said before it wasn't feasible or reachable because of so many barriers. But now the world has changed quite dramatically. Let's talk about astrophotography. That is a very, again, I mean, astrophotography is pretty cool. How did you get into that there? Because again, there's photography, then there's astrophotography. And I know from my dabbling in astrophotography, you've got to get out there and wait for a particular time for the Milky Way. You've got to download, I have the app photo pills to see where the Milky Way is. And it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, oh, I've got my settings right. What is it like? How did you get into that there?
Well, I made it out like it's going to be dramatic. It's really not. Yeah, it was quite a boring way to get into it. I started off taking pictures of normal things with my old phone and then started trying to edit them and make them look cool. And a few of them did look cool. But then I was sort of like, I could actually make some better ones. So I started to see that progress go forward, and it's like, well, I see people's images of space, and I think that I could probably do that myself. So then I got my first camera, and then I started going into different fields of photography. So learning all about how the camera works, how the sensors work, how the actual lenses work. So then that really gave me the skills to go and do more complex things like long exposures and astrophotography, which take a lot of time. Now, that really sparked it. And when I actually started doing astrophotography, I started off trying to learn to take pictures of the Milky Way. And the first one looked pretty terrible. You couldn't even see it. You saw a couple stars in the picture and it was just black. And that's usually what they look like. But then after about a month or two, I finally got my first image of the Milky Way itself, where you can start to see the galaxy. Now that was pretty cool for me. Um, and so then that's when I started to really deep dive into astrophotography and started learning about how to take deep space objects and look at constellations. And my favorite one's actually of Pleiades, and that's also known as Mataripi. So that constellation really was one of my favorite photos that I ever took.
Awesome. And I love how you have stepped to the process there of, the first few were not the best in the whole wide world, and you're like, oh damn it. But you kept on going. And I think, that's 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 a good learning for anything in life. The first few things are always going to be hard and challenging, but once you learn and pick it up and you go forward, things are going to get better, which is really cool. But I love that. I love that. And you spoke about it's getting easier for you to access space things in New Zealand. Who or what was someone in New Zealand that inspired you to now actually get in contact with somebody? Because these are great ideas, but did you have to talk to somebody about, hey, how do I actually pivot into the space here? Was it school? Was it an idea? Was it a scheme or something?
It actually started with myself.
Yeah.
So at first, straight after doing the astrophotography, when it started to die down a little bit, I wanted to start my own company. And I thought that I was the only one doing it. I thought that I was sort of just some sort of trailblazer, like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But then I quickly realized that when I got into the actual um, groups with people in the Aerospace New Zealand group, there was a lot of people doing the same thing. And now they were all doing quite different things. And I thought that it was really just about rockets and actual space hardware. It wasn't at all. Most of it was about satellite data, and most of it was about using it for Earth applications. So then, yeah, that's where I started off with my first startup, Converge Aerospace. If you heard of it, I'm sorry. It's probably it was debatable whether or not it would work. Now, the business model was to go and sell low altitude drones for multi-uses. So it's basically making drones that you could use for anything.
Yeah.
Whether or not they worked, I don't know. But yeah, that really kickstarted that learning curve of how business works because really the biggest barrier with getting into business isn't what you know, it's about your mindset that you're in. Now, it's very difficult to start a business, and that, like with astrophotography, the learning curve is a lot shorter, and that you start off with one picture and you're like, oh, that looks good. Let's try it again. And you sort of you build up your confidence as you go along, thinking your photos look better and better. But with a business, it doesn't really. It's you start off doing hard work, you get no results. You work again, no results. Work again, no results. Work, 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 no results. And then finally, when it gets to that point where you've actually go and take it to the public, or actually start to demonstrate yourself as you've done some work, that's when it all starts to pay off. So it really is a long time before you actually see a bit of success and a bit of validation that what you're doing has any purpose.
That's a really beautiful thing there, Cara, because lots of people think that businesses, oh, not lots. There's a perception that business is easy if you have an idea. But I spoke to another founder the other day, and they also said the same thing. They're like, hey, um, the idea is cool, but the business side of things is totally different. How to create a business, how to do that. That's a whole different world, and it's nobody teaches you that, and that's a learning curve that you go through. And what is it? How old were you when you started this business venture here, or the whole world of business, Cara?
Shockingly young. I would have been 15.
Yeah, and I asked that question because what was it like for you? Because you're 15 years old and you're now working, I guess, with people that are maybe similar age but a lot older than you. And here you are, a young 15-year-old coming into this space here with this idea. What is it like for you as a young person?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. So it was quite nerve-wracking at first. So my first steps were quite big ones. So I started jumping in straight into how to build this product.
Yep.
But I mean, that's not really what the foundation of a business is. It's not what you have, it's about how you sell it and what you use it for. So I ended up taking that forward quite far, and then I got that into a big accelerator program, the Aerospace New Zealand accelerator program, and that was a shock for a 15-year-old. That was a shock because I was thinking that there's going to be a whole lot of work to do. I had no idea what to do, and I was still under 18. So yeah, it was a shock for that. But then I learned how little it is in the grand scheme of things, just having an idea. Now, that was the first step, and then it really made it easier going forward. But after that, I started realizing that the things that I thought wouldn't happen in 10 years were starting to happen in 1 year. And that was a shock, but that fast pace now was actually quite exciting. It's no
Yeah,
longer a scare, it's more excitement.
that's beautiful. And were there people, or did you have mentors that took you on, or and did you have a lot of people that questioned you and went, actually, this is not didn't question the idea, but question your age, the fact that you come with this as a young person.
Well, it was actually quite interesting. It was a little bit the opposite.
Yeah.
So I had somewhere in the order of 20 mentors, probably. I
Wow.
probably have. Um, Not all of them were individuals. A lot of
Yep.
them were also companies themselves and organizations, government organizations too. And they were very supportive. And I don't think I'd get the same support if I was 20 than I would if I was 15.
Isn't that crazy? That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the amount of in-kind support that I get would have been worth much more than potential financial support. So if I went and got VC investment, I probably got more out of these people helping me than I would the money.
It's amazing. And sometimes, knowledge is super powerful over money, especially with the experience and expertise, which is really, really cool to hear. Because sometimes you have a feeling that because you're young, people don't take you seriously, but obviously people have been like, actually, this young person knows what they're talking about. So you started off with this. with this idea, your first startup? And then when did you start shifting towards cattle credit?
When I realized that it wasn't going to work. Uh, um, it was a nerve-wracking time because I had two startups on the go. So the school, they were doing a space challenge, the Space for Planet Earth challenge,
Yeah.
and so I thought that would be pretty cool to do, a bit of a side project. But little did I know that that was going to become the main project, and that I realized that this new business model was actually had a lot of potential and it really could solve a big problem here. Well, the other one, it was cool for me. It was a cool idea, but it wasn't going to do anything. So then I started to shift over and thinking that I could do them both. Don't do two businesses at the same time. If you're trying to start a big one, do not do it. Bad idea. So I ditched that and went straight to the methane monitoring, which at that time it wasn't a business, it was just some tech.
Yeah. And how cool is that? And as you know, a lot of times it's interesting how our businesses start up in two different ways. One startup, well, business startup because it's a passion, and then that people want their passion as well. But a lot of times, it's not a passion; it's what people actually want. You know, it's really funny as I speak to other people. Like, it's not about what you want; it's about what other people want because you've got to sell something. And it's especially when I do my coaching world and when I ask for feedback in my coaching world, people say you're kind and you're nice. Like, no, I don't want that there because nobody's going to buy kind and nice. They want to buy results. So tell me about the results that you've got. And how did you pick methane? I mean, this is again, I'm noticing that there's a trend here that you're picking some stuff that is really, really, I mean, I say niche in terms of the wider scale, but in terms of New Zealand, it's not very niche. It is something that is in front of mind all the time.
Yeah. Well, to quote what the satellite providers said, this was methane is one of the biggest greenhouse gas polluters there is. It's it's much more potent than CO2. There's a bit less of it, but it has much more of an impact, which means that the one way that you can reduce climate change the most is to reduce methane. Now, New Zealand has a bit of a blessing and a curse. We have a lot of methane, which means we can reduce a lot of methane, but also these come from cows. A cow burps methane every 90 seconds, and we have to
Oh,
try and figure
wow.
out a way to reduce it from a cow's rumen, which is difficult. And there's been a lot of companies here in New Zealand that have done it, and they're reducing it from 60, 30, 90%. And they're all very effective. But the difference is between that making an impact is whether or not we can prove it. Now,
Yeah.
all of our efforts here, all of our investments don't really mean anything overseas unless we can prove it. So there was a bit of an opportunity. There was some new satellite systems being made to monitor methane, but none of them were made for New Zealand. And we have an opportunity to use space technology, but we also don't have the resources. Now, this is where I started to develop technology to use other resources for New Zealand so we don't have to launch our own. Now, there was a bit of an investment into methane sat, but it still wasn't really up to par for what we needed. So the technology I made was actually using this satellite data and transforming it to make it useful for New Zealand farmers.
Oh, wow, beautiful. And why methane? Do you have a like, you've gone from photography and drones to something that is very, very different. Is there a family history of being in the farming industry, or was it just climate change? What is your spark into that specific area?
Well, it started off with actually government. So I wasn't really happy with methane being put into the emissions trading scheme, which means that farmers would have to pay for the amount of methane they emit.
Yes.
But also at the time, I thought that methane wasn't really something you could reduce. And I also thought that it was unfair that a farm would have to pay for the cow's burps. Now, I was wrong. And now it's sort of a little bit the opposite. And it might be an advantage to have it, it might not. Now that's up to government. But the thing is, methane can be reduced, which meant that farmers could actually start to climb up the ranks again and become sustainable meat and dairy providers, which they're starting to drop. Now, now is was a bit of an opportunity for us to actually measure this emissions, and plus it was to do with space. So I mean, it wasn't too much of a jump from the original startup because it was still pretty cool.
Awesome. And I like that how the motivation came from something that you weren't too keen about to start, but it's now become really, really cool. And how did you pick the name Cattle Credit? That's a really cool name.
Well, I mean, it's just giving credit to cows because cows don't get any credit for the work they do, and
Yeah.
farmers they won't get any credit for the emissions they reduce. So we're the people who actually make that happen.
Oh, beautiful. And has this been something when you first started, were you by yourself? Did you, or do you have other people around you that help you with this? I mean, apart from your mentors.
Well, yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. It started off with four of us, four people, and
Yep.
then boiled down to myself.
Yep.
And now I've got a lot of industry support. So it's really now getting to the point where I can start to build up a technical research team to make a commercially viable product, not just a scientific product.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And I see, as we have started to do this here, you've started being acknowledged for the work that you do. When we think about you, you're a finalist for the Space for Planet Earth Challenge. You've got an Emerging Technology Award. You got a Sustainability Regional Excellence Award, an Innovation Regional Excellence Award, Enterprising Technology Regional Excellence Award, Youth Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. All these crazy cool things. How does that make you feel as you started getting all this validation about the stuff that you're doing, not just the product, but also you as a person?
Yeah, well, that's probably quite key in a business. So, as I said before, you don't really get validation when you're starting a business, especially one that's as complicated as this. Now, it's difficult for a founder because you go along doing your work and then you don't get any reward or you don't see any success come from it and you start to think whether or not this is actually worth doing. But at the end of the day, even if I didn't go forward, which I am, it still would have been worth the things I've got out of it. And now these awards were sort of like a massive you got this from the universe, is basically saying that I am on the right path to do this and that there is actually some point in it. So I think for any founder, it would be beneficial to see those awards come forward and see that organizations do support what you're doing and that you have done a good enough job. I mean, that sort of speaks for itself.
Yeah, also, and I want to acknowledge and celebrate that because it is, as you said, you're managing the year 12 year, I guess. You are managing, we'll talk about this in a second, being a founder, schoolwork, and all this crazy awesomeness that's going on. So I'm going to acknowledge and celebrate that for you because it's really cool, all these awards that you've got. But I'm also going to celebrate your recent award. Tell us about that day. That happened a few days ago. And how did you feel when your name was announced, or did you know before?
Uh, I knew a little bit before, which made it
Yeah.
a little bit less dramatic, but it was still very cool. Now, I got the first ever Prime Minister's Space Prize, so the Student Space Prize, and it was pretty exciting. One, because it was the first one, and two, because it did prove that the work I'd done was useful, but also the fact that I only just started in the space industry a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of a shock to be able to go from nothing and just an idea in my bedroom to getting recognized by the Prime Minister in just a year. That was pretty exciting. But the biggest thing that I think came from that was really the recognition, because that prize is very high up and very prestigious, and it really gives an opportunity to showcase the diverse talent of the aerospace industry in New Zealand, and it also gives an opportunity to inspire the next generation of aerospace people because it still does seem like it's a distant frontier and it still doesn't seem accessible to most people. And I wouldn't have known about how accessible it is unless I got into these groups. So it really gives a bit of a glimpse into the ecosystem here in New Zealand to the outside people.
That is really, really awesome and well done again. Well, because getting acknowledged by, not just the Prime Minister, but the people that award that prize there. And what is it like for you when you were at Parliament at the Beehive and you spoke, and you got this, you get up there, and what is it like in that moment there? So if we take with the validation, we just think about Cairo as a young person getting this.
Well, I mean, I I used to be the shyest person ever.
Yeah.
That was just the reality of it. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to public speak, of course, and I would go bright red if I did. And I always dreamed of actually going and speaking to a whole lot of people and making an impact and giving an influential talk. And this was the first time where it actually felt like I did. And it felt like I'd actually got to a point where I was talking to important higher up people that could actually make change. And I actually had a chance to shine whatever I wanted to say to them and actually do it. And that's what I did. It was pretty special because that was the first time that properly had happened.
How crazy awesome is that you wanted that to happen and it actually happened in your own terms, and basically because you created it. And it's I love the story that you go used to be shy and you weren't able to talk to people, but look at you now. You're talking in front of people, you're jumping on here, and the confidence is really beautiful. I love that. That's a really cool thing. And I guess because we're in New Zealand, um, have you had the choice of talking to someone from Rocket Lab or being out in that space then by here?
Yeah, well, I actually just had a weird conversation with Peter Beck, the Rocket Lab founder.
Yes.
Very, very nice to meet him. And I'm quite looking forward to any sort of further conversations we have. It's quite exciting to speak with the person who catalyzed it here in New Zealand and actually start to progress that for further generations.
And how cool is this? It's like a full circle. At the start of the conversation, you spoke about people have dreams and it doesn't become reality in New Zealand. But here we have someone in New Zealand, Peter Beck, who has actually created and made it a reality for someone in New Zealand. That hey, in New Zealand we have the ability to be able to do this here. Um, so it's really cool and it's awesome that you've been able to touch base with them. And have you been to the States? Have you been over there to this lovely world of NASA and all this crazy stuff there?
Well, I'm actually getting a free trip over there next year, early next year. So tour of Rocket Lab's facilities at the Auckland factory and also at the Los Angeles factory, and also a tour of JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab for NASA, which is quite exciting because they're very famous facilities, and the chance to actually go and see them, I think that's pretty special.
Well done and well done. And that was a trick question because I knew that was happening, but I just wanted others to know that this was going on, and the fact that it was a free trip. I'm going to park this the business side for a second, and I'm going to talk about Cairo now. How do you're a young person, your friends are doing what young people do at the age of 17. How do you manage to navigate that as well? Because you were living your worlds, the business and the passion is big, but you have this other part of you which other people are doing. How do you feel about that? How do you navigate that in your mind?
It's a difficult one.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, you sort of have to choose one or the other a little bit.
yeah,
The amount of time that you can put into one thing does take away from the other, which means that if I want this business to succeed and the time crunch that it's on means I have to put a lot of time into it. And that does take away from personal things. But I mean, I think there's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make, whether or not that's going to be the same thing someone else wants to do. I don't know. But um, in the end, I think it's worth it for me.
yeah, totally. And I think what's important right there is it's your journey and your story that you're writing, not someone else's story. So as you said before, someone else might go, "Nah, I need to do that there," but I love the
And
fact that you have this.
this is actually the journey that I wanted from the start.
Yeah,
And I never was obsessed with the normal things someone my age would do. I mean, I still do them. I still hang out with my friends, that sort of thing. But I don't think I don't go to parties and that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
this was the journey that I wanted to take, and I saw it from a very young age, and I wanted to make some sort of big impact and end up being having the opportunity and the resources available to myself to make something happen when I want it to happen. And this is the first step towards this, and I'm quite happy with what I've managed to do in the last year. So I think after this is done, I'm going to be in a much better position than if I hadn't done anything. And that to me, that's worth it more.
100%, 100%, no matter what happens, the learnings, the growth that you'll have that you've had over the last year and you'll have over the next few years is going to be priceless, priceless, which is really, really beautiful. And amongst all this, obviously your family plays a big part in this, yeah. And how do they navigate this? Their young person is now in the media, This once shy young person is now in the media, getting spoken about RNZ and different people out there. How do they feel about this?
My family is very supportive.
Yeah,
I sort of go along on my own. I sort of just do whatever I want to do for the next steps, and they usually support. And I'm yet to have something that I've done that was questionable. Whether or not that day will come, don't know. Hope it doesn't. But yeah, my family is very supportive, and I'm forever grateful for that.
and that's really cool. You have a supportive family. You've got a supportive schooling structure at the moment. But, for these things to happen, you need support. Things don't happen by yourself. I read somewhere that everyone, even if you're solopreneur, there's people around you that have made things happen because you can't do anything in life by yourself. And as you know that as well, you've got people out there that advise you, that back you. And for people that try and do things by themselves, it's really challenging. You're just shooting yourself in the foot by trying to do it by yourself.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about how your technology works, or is that a state secret?
Oh, that's definitely a secret.
Yeah, I thought so.
Have to keep that offline.
Totally. No worries, no worries, no worries. But I guess my question for you is when you looked at the data for the first time, what surprised you when you looked at the satellite data for New Zealand?
Well, it's only been recently that I actually saw it. Now, the data is actually only just came out.
Yeah,
The satellite systems are only just been launched and they've only just came out of calibration. So
yeah,
I've had about a few weeks to actually have a look. But it's interesting to see what data is available to who and for what use it's for. Now, the satellite data I have access to, none of it's for New Zealand. All of it's for
uh,
overseas oil and gas industries. So it just detects oil and gas leaks from factories.
yeah,
It's interesting to see what they would need, and also seeing that that data would never work for New Zealand. But it's yeah, it's exciting to know that that data can turn into what it needs to be for New Zealand, and seeing that first step and seeing this data come and actually become a reality from the presentations that were given from Methane Sat and from Planet Labs and all of the satellite providers, from them making the initial announcement that this is going to happen and then seeing it happen, it's very exciting.
yeah. I love that. That is so cool. It's cool that the data is actually coming out and you can see what you can do with it, and also your lens on it. You go, actually, this is where the gap is, which is really, really cool. I love on your LinkedIn profile this. I love how you say, I'm just gonna paraphrase exactly what you say, because I want to know where that's come from. And in your LinkedIn profile, you say, I often say that we are just other creatures that come and go, like the dinosaurs and primate orangutans, and say that the small things don't matter, like if people like your new shirt. However, it is the small things that keep people happy. And if we're just focused on the big picture, we become minuscule. So to really make the most of life, we must enjoy ourselves. Ones that make you excited, ones that make you proud. And this is my personal goal that I work toward every day. That is very beautiful. That is very heartwarming. Where did that come from for you?
Um, yeah, a lot of those quotes, I feel they all come from the photos that I took,
Yeah.
and they photos have a big opportunity to actually influence how someone feels, and a lot of them were about showing that there is opportunity and that there is a pathway to get there. And I think what a lot of people do, and I'm guilty of it myself, is get stuck on the journey thinking that you're you're sacrificing your own well-being to reach a bigger goal. And in some cases that's good, in some cases that's bad. And what really we are searching for, everyone is searching for, is self-fulfillment. And I think anyone that actually says that they're not trying to fulfill themselves is probably not entirely, doesn't fully understand what's going through their mind, because everything that you do is to fulfill a need that you want. If you want to make impact, that's to fulfill your mind that you have made an impact and you feel good about that. And pretty much anything you do is to do the same thing. And I think what we end up doing is trying to chase a big goal and waiting for that massive big rush of good feeling to come at the end because you think that it's all going to be successful. But at the end of the day, you're going through this whole journey in complete misery. So why would you not try and make that journey enjoyable for yourself? Because I mean, is it really worth going through years of misery to just see a bit of happiness at the end? I don't know. We don't know. No one knows. They go along hoping for the best, but at the end of the day, no one actually knows what's going to happen.
And that's what a great perspective that, and I was having this conversation the other day with somebody about how in the Western world we have been duped. I use the word duped because I think it's duped that we should work hard for an employer until the age of 65 and then enjoy life at the age of 65. And I was like, how have we been duped? How has the world been duped? And when the government changes the age, everyone gets unhappy because again, we are, as you said, we're living to someone else's expectation of when we get joy. But as you said, why can't you experience joy every single day with your own fulfillment? And the fulfillment can come from whatever way, as opposed to chasing and waiting until you're 65 or whatever that end goal is. But it's a really lovely perspective that you have there. And yeah, something that I hope people who are listening to the podcast really think about as they go into the everyday, and it's easy for us to say you can change your job, but maybe you reframe the way you think about what you do at work. Maybe you reframe the way you think about things. I'm not saying people should quit their jobs if they hate them because you need to pay the bills, but think about how you approach your time at work. And I think, as you said right at the start, you said mindset is really important. For you to have a business mindset is really important. Entrepreneur mindset is very different. So yeah, that's a beautiful perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really, really love that there. Um, yeah, Cairo. And I guess I wonder if you had the same thing when I was doing astrophotography and you're out there and you look at the world, you just feel so tiny. Like when you look at the photo and it's just you, whether you're on the Canterbury Peninsula or whether you are in Cairo, wherever you are, because actually you've got to be where there's no light pollution, so it's just you and the big sky. Do you feel the same? Like when I'm there, I'm like, wow, I feel so tiny in this amazing world of just craziness.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The way that I usually think about it is if you're laying down on the ground looking up to space, you know that the amount of Earth behind you, you're on a massive planet, and there is a lot of opportunity out there, but we've also got a lot of backing behind us, which it feels like we're grounded and that there's a place for us to do things, but it also does feel like we're minuscule in the great scheme of things. But I think the more significant thing that played into my mindset was that I felt like we're trapped because everything we see, it's like a panoramic photo. It's not like it's a landscape that we're looking at. It's like it's out there and we're here. What are we supposed to do to get between? There's nothing really yet. So it really was that inspired me to want to get involved in that sector and actually start to push things forward to make it so space wasn't another realm, but it was more another a next door neighbor.
Love that. Again, the perspective that you bring is really, really beautiful and really very, very different, which is awesome. Gonna ask you some random questions now. What are your what are your thoughts about Elon Musk and his awesomeness with Space Link?
Yep. I think it's pretty exciting what he's doing. At first, I wasn't happy about Starlink because I
Yeah.
was engrossed in astrophotography, watching everyone's videos about how Starlink's going to ruin our observations and we're not going to be able to see anything because we're going to have these dots flying around in the sky. But it's not really true. It's it's pretty hard to see them, especially from space. The only time where it actually makes a bit of the only people who actually complain about this stuff is amateurs. Anyone who does it professionally knows that it doesn't really make a difference. So my mind has changed a little bit on the Starlink front, and but just in general, the things that he gets up to, I think they're pretty exciting, and he's a very good example of showing that when you want something to happen, you can make it happen. It just takes a lot of work. And that's not just physical work that you have to like sitting at your computer, typing up documents, making phone calls. It's not just that. It's also work on yourself to get yourself in the right position to be able to do that. Because it's very difficult to do. And you have to work against your own mind to actually do them. I think it's quite hard, and I'm still learning this myself. Sometimes it's very difficult to actually go and do something you know you need to do because it's such a big burden. And I think
Yeah.
he's a very good example of learning that and learning how to actually play against those that your mind and actually go and do what you need to do.
Yeah, and I said SpaceLink. I mean, I was thinking of SpaceX and SpaceLink, Starlink. Yeah, Starlink. And I was the same as well. I had this because I was naive and I was listening to the media and listening to, oh, Starlink is going to destroy the space. And as I've done more exploring, I was actually, wait a minute, there's nothing going on here. And I think about my own family who live in Zimbabwe, and the internet is really terrible. But now that they have access to Starlink, it's changed. The world has changed dramatically, you know. So you go, actually, wait a minute, the power and the access that this is providing to people where you can't access technology like this here is overwhelming, you know. And for those amateurs who are worried about dots in the sky, you know, I think you got to think about what the bigger impact is. And as you said before, is sometimes, in fact, most of the time, if you want to be a founder in a lot of things, you have to challenge the status quo and also challenge because our minds are so ingrained and been so culturally um, navigate into a way that anything that is not in the norm gets questioned by your own self. You know, you think about the self. So, you know, as you said before, this that you've got to work on, and we've got to work on that all the time. So that's really awesome.
There is
Um,
actually another
yeah,
perspective on that
go on,
Starlink issue.
go on.
Now is quite a bit of a pivotal time because we're starting to realize the impacts of space junk, and
Yes,
it is a much bigger problem than it might sound. Um, in the past, we used to just put satellites into a death orbit, which means that we'll throw them out deep into, well, not deep into space, but further out than we have satellites orbiting, and we'll just leave them there to die. That's not a good idea because it means that we have a shield of metal that we have to try and penetrate through if we want to leave. So if, for example, Starship trying to go to Mars, if that if that shield of metal got so dense and there was many more satellites in there, Starship wouldn't make it through.
yeah,
It's because satellites are orbiting at this faster than the speed of a bullet, and they're 300 kgs, some are over a ton, and you have to push through that. You're just going to get turned into a smoothie. You
yeah,
just get shot with many big bullets of metal, and there's no way that you're going to get out. And it's a big worry now that low Earth orbit satellites, which are the small ones, the ones that we launch every day, that they're going to do the same thing because there is tens of thousands of them. And there's a big worry that if there's enough out there, that it's going to become very difficult to one, track them and make sure that we don't hit them. And also, we might lock ourselves into this planet. It's a big concern, and it's a very real one.
that is, oh, that is so true. And I guess for someone that's not in this area here, you don't realize that how many satellites are actually out there. You know, you just think of the ones that they talk about, the James Webb or whatever, and but actually, as you said, there's thousands and thousands of them that are out there every day, which is a different perspective as well. Cairo, thanks for that. That's really awesome. Where if I was to talk to you in a year's time, where would you like to be in a year's time with Cattle Credit or for yourself, I guess?
In a year's time, I want to be in a position where if I wanted something to happen, I can make it happen much quicker than I could last year.
Yeah,
This business has taken a long time to do, a long time to set up, and it's still not set up properly. And
yeah,
there's still a lot of work to be done. But after the first one, I've heard this many times before, after you've started your first company, it becomes much easier to do the next. So I want to be in a position where it takes half the time to set up my next business because the next one might be much more urgent. There might be something that needs to be out right now, and I want to be able to make that happen in the time that's needed. That's where I want to be in 10 years.
amazing, amazing. I love that goal. I love that there. And you know, as you with each business, you'll learn some stuff, you'll get some skills, and then at one point, the mentee becomes the mentor, which is really awesome, which is really beautiful. I can't wait to see what happens then in that time frame. Kara, we've been talking for almost an hour. I mean, I could keep talking to you. You're, yeah, just the stuff you say is really profound and really beautiful. But before we say goodbye to you, we ask every one of our guests one question at the end. Our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and we invite our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into our basket from any part of their life.
A lot of people go out chasing impact. They want to make something happen, bring something to the real world. But your biggest barrier is not what you have, it's what you are. And I think the biggest thing that you can do, the biggest advantage you can have is if you take notice of the way that you think and the way that you act. And if you do that, that means that you can start to train the way that you act to make sure that you can make things happen. Because your biggest barrier is your motivation to go and make them happen. And the one way that you can take advantage of that is to notice how you work, refine how you work, and also then craft every situation and make sure that you're in the right mindset to actually make things happen.
It is so profound there, it's the world of working and coaching is very similar. Be aware, refine the awareness, and then make the impact there. So it's really beautiful, As you said before, you are your own worst enemy, but you're also your greatest strength. And if you can work on your mindset, then you are going to have an impact, whatever that impact looks like. And just before we round off, I always have a chuckle when people talk about chasing dreams or chasing this or chasing that there. And I always say to them, when you use the word chase, that implies whatever you're doing is running away from you, always running away from you. So if you're always chasing whatever it is, it's always running away from you. So again, words matter. So if you take away the word chase and just think about whatever that is, yeah, I just thought I should share that with you when I think about the word chase.
Yep. No, it's a very good way of putting it. I actually think your dreams actually come closer to you the more you run for them because people notice that and they want to make it easier for you.
Totally.
I think it's a big
Beautiful.
opportunity.
Awesome. Any last words, Cairo, before we say goodbye to you?
Uh, my last word is to take action on this because a lot of the videos that I see, I do skip past. A lot of them have a lot of value, but I don't remember them. So I think some of the things that I've learned could be applied to other people. And I think there's a lot of things that I could learn from other people as well. But it doesn't make a difference unless you remember them and put them into action. So I do encourage anyone who actually saw any value in anything that was said today to write them down and actually make them happen.
Exactly. Awesome. We listen to so many podcasts, read so many things, but unless you do something with it, it's a waste of time. Might as well not have done.
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cairo, for jumping on. I've learned so much about you as a person today. I'm really excited to hear about how cattle credit goes, but that's just the first of what is going to happen with you. I look forward to seeing how that goes. And when you become world famous, don't forget us here. And yeah, and really, 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 really awesome to see what you've done over the last in a year, basically. Yeah, thank you very much, Cairo. I know you're a busy person, but hopefully get some downtime over the next few days to spend some time with your family, and then get back into it as the year goes on. Till
Cool.
next time, for our listeners out there, thank you for jumping on. Hopefully, as Kara said, you've learned something, but you're going to action something as you go forward. If you haven't learned anything, go back and listen again because you've missed out tons of golds today. But the most important thing, till next time, keep safe, keep smiling, and don't forget to put something into your basket knowledge. Till then, bye everybody. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.